coming to your spouse with curiosity and compassion instead of criticism is really key, because it changes the words you say to them, but also the way that you come at them with your tone, because tone is really important too.
John, it's good when you're learning things. And that's the whole goal for us here at Focus on the Family. And believe me, we learn right alongside you, the listener, the YouTube watcher. And our guests are talking about little things you can do that make big differences. And I think that's been my observation about marriage. When Jean and I hit a tough spot, it's usually because one of us has said something a little off that sets the other one askew. Mm-hmm. Why did you say it like that? That kind of hurt my feelings, whatever it might be. And if we could be a little more thoughtful about how we communicate, and in other areas of our lives, how we interact with each other, man, you could have a marriage that is the best. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're aiming for today with our guests. Dave and Ashley, welcome back. Good to have you here.
Oh, so glad to be here.
Always.
Yeah,
always
fun.
a pleasure.
It's good to see you guys. Listen, I was serious about that in terms of the 7 simple shifts. That's what you guys are talking about, these simple shifts. Yes. It can sound too easy, so let's cover those 7 just quickly, and then we'll begin to dive into them. And hopefully couples can walk away from this and go, oh man, we can make a 20% improvement in our marital relationship. That would be good.
Absolutely, that would be good. And that was really the heart of the book. I think sometimes we overcomplicate things. I overcomplicate things.
You think?
And you think, oh, I've got to lose 100 pounds. It's like, well, maybe you could start just by
you would go right to that, wouldn't you? That wasn't the idea I had in mind, but
right. Baby steps.
Baby steps. First 100 pounds.
So and in marriage, it's the same way. We think, oh, I've got to, if marriage was a weight loss goal, I've got to lose 100 pounds in our marriage to get where we want it to be. It's like, well, maybe just take smaller bite-sized steps to make simple shifts that over time really will lead to those big payoffs. And the shifts that we're talking about are just those main areas that affect every marriage. Areas like money, communication, sex, parenting, legacy. Like these are things that all couples talk about and deal with. And we've just put together some tools based on working with couples for many years and of course, studying what the Bible has to say about marriage and realizing God doesn't want it to be complicated. It doesn't mean that marriage is always easy, but It's not as complicated as we make it. And if we'll do these little shifts, it can make a big difference.
Okay, so we hit some of those themes as people were listening. It went by fast, but I'm sure they caught it. But Ashley, when we start looking at it, communication is really tricky.
Yes.
For all kinds of reasons. We tend to want to not recognize that we do have some limitations, gender issues. And what I mean by that is men think differently than women. Yes. I mean, the culture in some areas, they're trying to say, no, there's no difference. There is a difference. I mean, researchers show this when they give kids toys, right? The boys turn them into bombs and explosions, and the girls tend to turn it into a tea party. Mm-hmm. So there's just basic things that we're already set for at 2, 3, 4 years old. And guess what? We pull these things into our teen years, our 20-somethings, and certainly our marriages. Mm-hmm. So in looking at that, what's one first step a couple can take to start talking in a way that really builds each other up?
Man, that's such a good question. And we can relate too. We've been married almost 25 years and it's been a journey. But I will say early in our marriage, I really made the mistake that a lot of couples make in assuming that Dave processes things the way I do and that he should communicate the way I do. And really, we constantly found ourselves bumping heads. And just to give an example, like, for example, I tend to process things as I'm talking. Like, I'm talking and I'm processing and I'm expecting him to do the same. And so if I had an issue and I would bring it to Dave, I would, start talking about it and just kind of just going through it, just drilling him with all these different things that I wanted to address. And he would look at me kind of stunned. And then I would get to the end of my tirade and he would just stare at me and he wouldn't say anything. And I took it as, oh, you don't care. You don't have anything to say. You don't care. And so then I would be like, you just don't care. And then I would kind of go into the other room. And then he would come back later after maybe like 30 minutes. And he's like, Ashley, I do care. I just needed time to think. Like, I just needed time to take this in. It's overwhelming. I care more than you could imagine.
I got to process this.
Yes.
But she'd watch so many Hallmark movies where,
Guilty.
Where the guy has a script and knows what to say every time. The good-looking lumberjack always knows what to say.
He does.
And he's so sensitive and kind. And I didn't have a script. I'm like, I don't know what to do here. Mm-hmm. And I'm also very literal, too. Like, one of the things we had to learn in marriage is she would say things to try to soften a request, but really I would take it literally. Like she would say things like, "Hey, Dave, when you get a minute, could you bring me this?" And I thought that meant at any point in the day.
When you get a minute.
When I get a minute. Young husbands, listen to me. If your wife says when you get a minute, it means now.
It means now.
Right now. No one told me this. She would say, like, we need to do we need to mow the yard. And I would think, how are we going to mow the yard? It's not a 2-person job. We have a push mower. But I would wait till she was ready to do it with me, and she would say, why isn't the yard mowed? And I'd say, well, I thought we wanted to do it together. And she said, why would we do it together? I said, exactly. And so when your wife says we need to do something, guys, it probably means a gentle way of her saying, hey, you need to do this. And
or can you please do
Can
this?
you please? And she was being so polite and kind and softening the language, but I was just a Neanderthal that took everything completely literally. And it took us a while just to connect on simple things like that, which we laugh about now, of course. And then as marriage goes on and communication gets more nuanced and the issues you face might get a little more complex.
So a couple right now is going, okay, so that's where we're at. What is that first step? What is something they can do to either say it differently?
Yes. No, that's true. Because I know they're like, well, that's, lawnmower issues are not our thing.
Right.
I think where
we're
need to
smarter
start,
than Dave.
Yes.
So can you help us with something that's actually practical?
Really, we need to come at each other with curiosity and compassion. And if we can start there and not come at each other with criticism, because I found myself in those hard years of communication always really having this critical eye. When I shifted to having curiosity, like, well, why is he not speaking? Is it that maybe I've just landed, these things on him that he needs to think about? Or maybe I'm not being clear about this because clarity is kindness. Like maybe I just need to be a little more clear. When we have curiosity, it's really hard to be angry about that because we're curious instead of critical. And so I think even just that simple way of having curiosity, it changes how we talk to each other. Have a curious tone too. It's not just the words you say, it's how you say them. And when you're curious in your tone, it's a little softer because you're trying to inquire about what's going on instead of assuming what's going on.
And these are all great concepts. Let me ask you this you relate to the talk you hear in your head. Again, we learn things, family of origin, all those things that we grow up with. If you had a negative parent, for example, when you hear your spouse say something like, oh, the chicken seems a little cool, or whatever it might be. And I know a lot of guys are doing the cooking now, so I don't mean it in in that way. It's just whoever says something as an observation can be taken as a demeaning comment, like you're attacking me and my worth. That I'm not good enough, I didn't do it well enough. Speak to that idea of the words we hear in our head, and how do we arrest those so that we don't let that fly off the handle inside?
Ashley's so good at this. In addition to her long resume already, she's also a very gifted biblical counselor and works with people and helps them with these kind of issues all the time, because the voices in our head, that inner monologue, that inner soundtrack, it impacts everything that we do. And a lot of times when your spouse responds in a way where they're hurt by something you said or did, it goes much deeper than what you said or did. It goes to a place of woundedness that they have probably from long before you even came into the picture, where they're carrying this deep insecurity around a certain area that came from growing up in a home maybe where, like you said, there was potentially a negative parent, or they felt like as a kid they couldn't do anything right, and they're carrying that into the marriage. And you could say something not meaning anything by it, but it touches a wound from way back then. And so when your spouse responds, and this is something Ashley's taught me, responds in a way where it doesn't seem like it fits, right? You said something that wasn't meant to cause offense and they seem to get offended or emotional. Instead of getting defensive yourself, like she said earlier, get curious, like lean into that. Say, let's talk about that. I didn't mean to hurt you, but let's talk about the nerve that struck, because I want to help. I want to help not do that again on my part, but I also want to help you process and work through whatever the root cause of that wound might be.
It sounds like diffusing.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the word picture I think of the bomb, the emotional bomb being diffused with great craft.
Cut the right wire.
Cut the right wire.
Right.
I don't know which one to cut. But Ashley, let me ask you this. You mentioned tone a while ago. I love the story you had in the book about your dog.
Yes.
Gene and I were laughing when we read that because we could see your boys describe for the audience what happened because this is something I'm going to try.
Oh my gosh. Well, we have our little dog Chi-Chi. She's a Chiweenie, supposedly. That's what the pound toad
Chiweenie.
is. Yes, supposedly that's a Chihuahua and a Dachshund mix.
Okay.
So they call that a Chiweenie. And our boys, we say sweet things to Chi-Chi all day, but they were like wanting to see if they said mean things in a nice tone, if she would have the same response. And she did. So they'd be like, Chi-Chi, you're the ugliest dog there is on earth. And
Chi-Chi
we
would
really
wiggle
don't like
over.
you, Chi-Chi. And she's just smiling and wagging her tail. And it's like, she doesn't care at all what they're saying. And they're like, see, it's the tone, Mom. It's the tone.
Well, then they'd say nice things in a mean tone.
Oh, that's right.
Like,
yes.
you're the best dog ever, and we love you so much. And
she'd be like,
she'd get scared.
So tone made the difference, not the words.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. And so we, as human beings, we need to pay attention to our tone because it matters. And I think sometimes we can find ourselves in what I like to refer to as a sandpaper season, where maybe our spouse didn't do a thing, but we're in a rough season where we already feel wounded, we feel raw. And so they could just say just something that isn't even meant to be hurtful, but we take it that way because maybe the tone hit us wrong.
How do we diffuse that? Because I've had that experience where I'm just saying something almost like a journalist would say. 4 people went off the road yesterday and struck a pole, and everyone survived and everyone's good. Why would you say that to me like that? And I'm going, what did I just say? So how do we honor our spouse to give us that feedback of how that comment may have wounded them? And then in the inside, our head talk is, what in the world is she talking about? All I did was state a fact.
Yeah.
I didn't have a tone with it at all. Where's the referee call in that? How do I back off of that and say, okay, obviously it didn't work for her.
Right.
What do I need to do to say it differently? What do you coach couples with in that regard?
I love that you said you got to get a hold of your own self-talk, because I do think if we're just stewing all day and having assumptions like, well, she's just emotional and she just doesn't get me, and
Right.
like, what's wrong with her? Like, if we're just stewing on that all day, when we have that next conversation with our spouse, we're going to come off really negatively too, because we've assumed the worst of them. And so first of all, we've got to rein in those thoughts and assume the best, and then ask questions. Ask questions if you don't know, if you're like, really like, what's going on there? I would go up to your spouse and say, listen, I can tell that really struck a nerve in you. I want you to know I'm for you and not against you.
Yeah.
What went on there? Like, what did I say or do? Or maybe it wasn't even me. What's going on? Like, what's going on here?
In that regard, that's a great point. We make the assumption that you did it on purpose. And I would say 95% of the time, that's probably not accurate.
Exactly.
Both directions, right? Mm-hmm. We do assume that you did that. You threw that dart at me, and it hit its mark. Mm-hmm. And you're going, what dart? What mark? And, there might be times where you are throwing a dig, and you got to be careful with that, obviously. There's healthier ways to do that. But again, that's how, with that communication, we got to be mindful and maybe make the assumption, and this is a good thing. I'm having a lot of ahas lately, and I've been married almost 40 years. That's
amazing.
trouble. But just that idea of, before I react emotionally like that, make the assumption that Jean didn't know what she was saying, or vice versa.
Exactly.
And
yes.
But how do you train yourself to do that? To say,
Right.
okay, I'm not going to assume the worst first.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13, when Apostle Paul gives us this great list of what love is, the very first adjective he uses is patient. Love is patient. Mm-hmm. Love is patient. Love is kind. It goes on from there. And I think that's the part, he put that first, the Bible lists it first, because that's the part we struggle with the most, is the patience of like really taking a breath and leaning in and staying curious. Ephesians 4:32 talks about be kind and compassionate to one another, and then it uses a word that I love, tender-hearted, forgiving one another. And I think that tenderness in marriage is usually what we need to lean into when there's a pattern of offense, of like, how can I, in my tone, in my words, in my pursuit of my spouse, in my thoughtfulness, just be tender with them. Not rough with them, but just tender with them. And if we'll take that posture, it will change the way we talk. And all of us, we know how to do this, because you look at somebody that might be harsh with their spouse and they think, well, I'm just not a flowery person with my words. And then they'll get their dog and they'll be like, I love you so much. You're so precious, And so they clearly know how to be tender, right?
Yes.
We all do. Yeah. But we just need to direct that where it matters the most and be tender and patient with our
that's good.
spouse.
And I want to say this too, just practically take at least 5 seconds, just count to 5, take a deep breath, before you say anything. And if at number 5, if you're still just rearing to go, ready to say something mean, count to 5 again.
Oh.
And if you can't get yourself regulated, dismiss yourself and say, I love you. I'm going to go take a minute. I'll be right back. I promise I won't leave you hanging. I just need a minute.
Yeah.
Because I think so many times we just don't advocate. We don't take the time because we're just, we let the emotions take over. But we need to take the time because our relationship is worth it.
You're on the same team, so you're on the same team. And I think as husbands in particular, we tend to look at things in sports analogies, and we look at things in wins and losses. I'm on one team here, you're on the other, and I'm going to win. You're coming against me, I'm going to score here. But that's not the right way to look at it. We have to say we're in the same huddle, we're wearing the same jersey, we're on the same team. We're either going to win together or lose together.
Well, it shows our EQ, really, our emotional ability there, because we think we're winning because we got the argument, but we lost the war, right? We lost her heart, and that's not a good place to be.
This is Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. Our guests today are Dave and Ashley Willis, and we're talking about their book, Do Marriage Better, 7 Simple Shifts for a Deeper Connection. Now, if you find value in this content, subscribe by clicking below. It'll be a big help to us. Let's go ahead and return to the show.
Let me ask you this question. For those watching on YouTube, you could see this. Let's just pretend for a moment, Ashley, you and I are married, and you're talking to me. Here we go. I'm looking at my phone. Oh, wow, that's interesting news. And you're trying to tell me something.
Yes.
This doesn't feel very warm and friendly from me, right?
No. Right, distraction.
Okay, so I have really tried to be better when Jean, we've got an open kitchen, formal, like grand room, so we can sit across and talk, and she can be doing stuff. And I've really had to go, okay, she's talking, and set that thing down. But speak to the way technology is interrupting our ability to have intimate conversation, and the discipline we need to say, okay, we're setting this aside.
Man, I mean, we just live in a technological world. I mean, it's just it's how we do so many things. And I think so many couples just get distracted by it. I know we've had to deal with this because a lot of the ministry that we do is through, social media and online. And so we've had to tell ourselves, there's times in the day where we just put the phone down. And not only beside you, I think there's a beautiful thing that happens when it's in the other room.
Yeah.
You don't even have the longing to pick it up, because there is this thing when it buzzes, we feel this knee-jerk reaction. Oh, we need to check and see who just texted or whatever post happened or whatever. And so we have to have the discipline to walk away from it and really give ourselves pockets of time where we're technology free. And I know you'd say, well, Ashley, how in the world do we do that? What if the kids call or whatever? And it's like, no, I mean, be safe and all those things, but have times in your day where you put technology down and look each other in the eye. I mean, there's nothing that replaces that actual FaceTime, right? Yeah. Where you're able to really communicate and really pay attention to each other's body language. Because I think a lot gets missed when we're, half paying attention with the phone, in front of our face or beside us, and even feeling kind of the pressure of checking the phone.
I don't think there's anything that says I don't care like this.
Oh, definitely.
Because when someone's trying to talk to you, especially your spouse, and your nose is in your phone or whatever, they don't feel like you're all in. It's distracting, right? Let's move to prioritizing your marriage. This is one, especially for young couples, that can be difficult in the busy season. But you have this concept of concentrating on your marriage. Why do we say a marriage-centric family is critical over a child-centric family? How do we do that?
Well, the simplest reason why we do that is because that's the way God designed it.
That is true.
When you look at Scripture, you look at how He orchestrated the family from the very first couple on. That's His design, that the most important human relationship we have on earth, if we're married, is with our spouse. Is God first, then our spouse, then our kids. And when we get that out of balance, when we put our kids first, it creates codependency. It creates a lot of difficult things. It's one of the reasons why the divorce rate is spiking among empty nesters.
Right.
And people are good at co-parenting and paying bills and running kids to practice and being focused on the kids. And once the kids are out of the house, they look at each other and realize they're married to a stranger. And sadly, there's an epidemic of divorce among people who've been married, 20, 30 plus years. And we're trying to just help people. We're not saying anything really new or novel in this. We're just trying to point people back to the timeless truth of God's design for putting marriage first. And when you give your kids the gift of seeing a healthy marriage, it is a gift to them, because a lot of young people are scared to get married. right now. They're cohabitating, they're dating around, they're scared of marriage. The reason why is they grew up in a household where they never saw a good example of it. And if we can give our kids a good example, that's one of the greatest gifts we can give them, is they go out on their own and start their own family.
That's really good. Now, how did Oreos teach this to your family? This is what I want to know. I mean, I love a good Oreo.
Cookies and sweets find their way into all of our family stories. We just have a lot of sweet tooth people in the house.
Okay.
But there was an Oreo story.
There is. Oh my gosh. It grosses me out every time I tell it, but it's also kind of a funny story. So I remember this is when we were in the thick of raising 4 boys at the time. Our youngest was probably, 1.5, and our oldest was maybe 10. And there was this quiet in the house all of a sudden. And that rarely happened at that time.
Yeah.
And we were enjoying it for a moment. I think I was folding laundry. You were doing some other kind of chore. And it was just a quiet moment. And I realized, I don't know where Chatham is, our littlest one. And I'm like, oh my gosh, where's Chatham? And Dave's like, I thought you knew where Chatham was. And I'm like, well, I thought he was just playing with his toy over here quietly. And he's like, he's not there. And then we asked the boys, do you know where Chatham is? Did he happen to crawl up the stairs or what, whatever? And they're like, no, we don't know where Chatham is. So we're all losing it. And all of a sudden we look at the kitchen, and at the time we had a great room, but our kitchen light was off, but there was one little light coming from the half bath that was right off the kitchen. And I'm like, he was kind of in the midst of potty training, and I'm like, did he actually go to the potty? And so we go over to the bathroom, and at first I'm relieved. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's Chatham. We found him. He's safe and sound. But then I realized there's this dark ring around his mouth. And I'm like, what is that? That's weird. And then I look and see his soggy hand with a soggy Oreo, and he is smiling ear to ear, dipping an Oreo in the toilet and eating it.
Yeah.
And he was so proud of himself.
Yeah.
Stay on the road. Don't veer off the road for the listeners. Okay.
No, but we immediately swiped him up and cleaned him. We're gagging. Everybody's gagging. But it was, we laugh about it now, but it was crazy.
And help me with why that reinforces marriage.
Jim, I'm not sure.
I think honestly, it's first of all having a sense of humor, right?
Yeah.
But also being a team. I think just being a team and handling things and, just getting in there and tackling things together, because parenting is hard.
And what we talked about in the book with that story too is when you take your eyes off of something that's important for too long, it's going to veer someplace it shouldn't.
Exactly.
And that happened with our kid, but we see that over and over happen with people's marriages, where you put it on autopilot. You don't really take time to check in and say, where are we? How are we? You're just assuming everything's fine because there's not this big crisis. There's not this big explosion, just like we did in that moment where things seemed fine because they were quiet. But quiet doesn't always mean healthy. And you need to be proactive and lean in and say, how are we doing? What can I do to be a better spouse to you? And are we prioritizing each other enough? Do we need to make sure we have that date night on the book consistently? And just checking in, because left on autopilot, every marriage will crash eventually.
No, that's good. I will never think of Oreos quite the same
I know.
way. But,
I know.
Yeah. And even in that circumstance, I mean, there's an illustration there, I'm sure, of different parenting styles and how you handle these things, because Dina and I would always approach some of the problems quite differently. But you had the wisdom to go seek out help from somebody because of those differences. And I thought that was really an important part of what you shared, because there's an accountability, there's a willingness to grow. Who did you seek out and what did you learn?
Well, I'm telling you, this is Dave. Dave had a lot of wisdom, because we found ourselves just, really getting along in most areas of marriage. But when it came to parenting, there was a growing resentment and a tension that we could feel. We weren't fighting and calling names or anything like that, but just you could feel the tension. You could cut it with a knife. And we just found that we just could not get on the same page with parenting. I was much more black and white, and Dave was just nicer. And I was like, between the two of us is like a balanced parent. We've got to figure this out. But Dave one day came to me and he said, Ashley, he's like, listen, we have, I know that we have all these areas of marriage where there's not tension. And he said, but this tension, I just feel like it's growing. And I feel that you resent me. And I hate that. But he goes, but I feel like I don't even know what it is. And he's like, and in the conversations we've had, I can tell that you feel a bit like you don't know what it is either. You can't put your finger on it. And he goes, I have this idea. Let's pray about, asking God to bring to mind a couple that we know that has a thriving family, not a perfect family because those don't exist, but a family that we admire that's maybe a little bit 10 years ahead of us. And let's have them over for dinner and talk to them and just learn from them. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. So we prayed. God brought to mind the same couple, the same family. And then I started saying, oh no, they're so busy. You know what? we shouldn't ask them, like, this is probably not a good idea. And he looked at me and grabbed my hand and he said, Ashley, you can't say no for people. The worst that can happen is they can't do it, and we'll pray about it, and we'll think of another couple. God will bring to mind another couple, and we'll go from there. But we need to do this. And so we approached the couple at church, and they were more than willing. I mean, they were so honored that we would even ask. And they were like, we would love to teach you what we know. So we had them over for pizza and spent like 2 or 3 hours just talking through all these issues we've been facing with parenting. And they gave us new thoughts and new practical skills to consider and to use that we had never thought about, nor would we have thought about without talking to them. And we went back to them over the years, but it was a real game changer for us.
Yeah. So just being willing to ask for help and seek help is sometimes one of the wisest things you can do for any part of life.
Yeah.
But certainly for marriage. And in marriage, for whatever reason, we just clam up and we're like, no, I don't want people to know our business. I don't want that. And you can't think that way. You have to think there are people out there who've been where we are, who've walked through this and can teach us what they know. And let's lean into that. And I'm so thankful that we did. And that couple, became great friends and great mentors. And it wasn't like formal. It wasn't, we weren't meeting every week. It wasn't like that, but they were there in our corner from then on. And that made a huge difference.
Yeah. Allow me to interrupt for a moment to say how much I appreciate you watching. If you find value in this content, please subscribe by clicking below. It'll be a big help. Now, let's get back to the show. One of the observations I have, we get letters and emails here at Focus on the Family from really broken marriages. Yeah. And it's so sad because they loved each other at one time. And you're thinking, if you could have fought through those things and done these little things that you're talking about, you could have such a better experience in this life.
Yes.
And make your marriage something that even your children will go, wow, mom and dad have a great marriage. What a great goal. Rather than the alternative,
Yes.
We're done. We don't like each other anymore. And then everything breaks from there. And that's one of the things we're fighting for every day because we see the stats. We know what the impact, particularly on children, when mom and dad split. It's not a good thing. And so we fight for it every day, along with the donors that support us here at Focus. One of the main things, we track all the folks in terms of topic, people that call us and schedule an appointment with our counseling department. And that's a great service that we have here. If you're struggling, we can provide a free consultation with certified state licensed counselors, and they'll help you think through the beginnings of getting help and what that might look like. So take advantage of that.
Right.
Call us if you need help in your marriage or in your parenting. But in that context, we track the themes. And so the things that are up there at the very top will be financial struggles, and then typical physical intimacy is right up there as well. It's one of the big crushers in marriage. And it doesn't need to be that way. But how do we get a healthier grasp on physical intimacy in marriage and make it the wedding present God intended it to be?
And it is meant to be a gift. And I think one place that we haven't done a great job as Christianity as a whole, the churches that most of us grew up in, was not celebrating the gift aspect of it. We did a good job for generations past talking about how it's sinful outside of marriage, dangerous outside of marriage, and that's certainly true. But we got so good at that message that I think we forgot the other side, that within marriage, this is a gift to both spouses, that God designed you both for pleasure and connection. And that when you're leaning into this gift, this intimate gift for a husband and a wife, it's not only physical pleasure, it's not only procreation, but mind, body, soul. You're creating and experiencing this beautiful oneness that God intended for you to have. And if you're denying yourself that, or denying your spouse that consistently, then you're making your marriage weaker than it could be, less enjoyable than it could be.
Yeah.
And we try to be really delicate talking about this particular topic because there's so much nuance to it, especially depending on how people were raised, depending on past experiences. We certainly are very, very sensitive to those who've had any type of abuse in their past. And this thing that was meant to be a gift was somehow weaponized against them. That's tragic and terrible. And so we want to not just give these blanket statements to make people that are really suffering and hurting because of past wounds feel like they're just not measuring up even more. But for all of us, we want to say, just like the book says, this is an area that we can do better. We can experience in a better way. It doesn't have to be scary or intimidating. And there are simple steps you can do to get there.
We first have to realize that physical intimacy is not going to look the same the duration of your marriage, because we believe there are different seasons of intimacy. And that's based on different circumstances and mindsets and everything in between. And so we like to say that there's 4 different seasons of intimacy, and we use the letter B because we like alliteration. And these are not necessarily in sequential order, but we have what we refer to as the beach season.
Yeah.
Imagine like a beach chair.
'Cause there's a chair that goes with each of these. We do this as a
season.
talk at conferences and have these 4 chairs on stage. And
Exactly.
So you have your beach chair. That sounds
beach
good.
chair. It sounds good, right? Who doesn't love the beach, right? And we often equate this season with the honeymoon season because it's when physical intimacy seems to be the easiest. We're having more of it. We're enjoying it. We feel like everything.
there are no real
is-
distractions.
Yeah,
You got nothing else to do when
distractions.
you're at the beach. There aren't
Right.
other things to worry about.
That's right. You have less worries. Everything seems to be working, firing on all cylinders. And there's not as many frustrations when it comes to physical intimacy. But, I mean, if we stayed at the beach all the time, we'd be sunburned and chafed. So you can't stay there all the time, right?
Right, yeah, you can't. Nobody lives like all day in a beach chair.
Right.
It's a nice season that you can keep coming back to in your marriage, but the day-to-day life, nobody's intimate life looks like that all the time because of their seasons. And so it's beach, busy, babies, and broken are the 4 seasons. And to give kind of a quick rundown of the other 3, the busy season, which is a kitchen stool in our talks.
Just practical.
It's practical. In our house, kitchen stool is not a comfortable chair, but it's the most used chair in the house
Right.
because of where it is. It's functional, it's practical, it's where kids will sit, do some homework, grab a snack. And that kind of represents the season of your marriage when you're running. There's always something to do. And in intimacy, you're not going to have time probably to burn candles and put on romantic music and recite poetry to each other. It's going to be quicker, right?
Right.
And
you may schedule it.
yeah, you might have to put on the schedule,
Yeah.
which for some people doesn't seem romantic, but it's super practical. And we talk more about what that can look like in the book. So there's the busy season, the baby season, which is when you're trying to get pregnant, or you are pregnant, or you have young babies at home. It's represented by like a nursery rocker. And intimacy is really different in that season, especially if you're going through infertility struggles, where all of a sudden just the act itself can feel mentally like this we're failing at this. It can create a wedge between husbands and wives. There's a lot of couples that we've counseled through the years with that struggle, and we have so much sensitivity to them. If you've got young babies at home, man, it's hard. You're exhausted. And then just with God's sense of humor, he made this act the very way that children are created. And then once children come, they try to make sure you never have it again. Like they just know they'll beat on the door at the worst time. It's exhaustion.
It's
Right.
all of that.
All the
and
things.
let me ask you, Ashley, because I think what's hard typically, and again, there's the couple listening that it's not the way they experience, and I get that. I don't want to be mindless about that. But typically, we've got testosterone. This is an appetite. And in that context, our ability as men, as husbands, to notice the season and say, okay, how do we relax that and not turn that into a feud? One more thing that is going to be irritating to you as a wife or to the husband, but in that context, how do we go with the season? Season sounds like a long time when you're
does.
talking about physical intimacy, which we're hoping for a more regular dose,
Yeah.
to be
Right.
quite honest. And so, how do we manage that, or how would you recommend husbands manage that a little better?
I think being aware of it and being sensitive to it is half the battle, because I do think that where a lot of couples have, a lot of frustration in this area of intimacy is thinking the other just doesn't care. She doesn't even care about my needs, or he doesn't care about my needs. And then neither one do anything about it. They just are mad at each other. And that is a libido killer right there, right?
Right.
And so, the sensitivity from a husband really eases the wife. But I would also say this, because I remember those days being touched out, having small children,
Oh, yeah.
nursing, and just all the different things. It just doesn't build romance for a woman, right? And so one thing a husband can do is help more than he thinks he needs to be helping, because there's a lot of stuff that even if you are like nursing nursing your baby that only the mom can do. So husbands, just pitch in as much as you can, just to lift that load a little bit, and not just the physical load of things to do, but the mental load that a wife is usually carrying all the
Right.
time. We really tend to have this mental load of all the to-dos going on in our head all the time. And so it leaves little room for intimacy. But I also think we need to pay attention, or husbands need to pay attention, especially in this season, to the non-intimate affection they are giving their wife. Because in the counseling space, I hear all the time from wives, especially in this season, they say he only wants to touch me if he thinks it's leading elsewhere, like to full-on intimacy. And I feel like it's just meeting his needs and he doesn't care about me. And the husbands will say, no, I do care. I feel like she's touched out during the day. And so what it boils down to is wives need more of that non-intimate touch from their husband.
Well, it's still intimate. It's not leading to the bedroom.
Right, it's not leading to the bedroom.
Where husbands, you are touching your wife, showing affection.
It's affectionate.
Without any
exactly.
agenda other than just wanting to show her affection.
When you look at the book, again, 7 Simple Shifts, in this area, what was something that really connected with you emotionally as a wife and a woman? What made a difference for you to say, okay, I can relax in this area. I don't feel like I'm on roll call, or, I'm thinking of that little breakthrough, which is really the
Yes.
theme of the book. What was something that really helped you to say, okay, this helps me better understand Dave?
And this isn't just my story. I hear this from a lot of women. I know in that season of raising babies in particular, I would often look at physical intimacy as another thing on the list, and that's
a
easy.
to-do.
As a to-do, right. And I'm checking the boxes all day. And I knew that, I needed to make a shift in that this is a gift. This isn't just checking the box. And a real breakthrough for us was there was one day where we talk about something called a physical intimacy threshold, where like you can agree on a number of days that you don't let this many days pass without at least talking about it. Like, when can we engage? Okay. And so I knew we were coming up on that day for us, and I mentioned it to Dave, and I think he felt the tension from me. And it wasn't that I didn't want to engage; I was just feeling pressure, because it can feel like a pressure.
Yeah.
And as the day went on, I was like, "We'll get to it." Well, I'm like communicating with him, because communication is a huge part of having a thriving intimate life. And so anyway, we get to kind of the end of the day, and Dave's like, "Listen, I want this to be a good experience for both of us. And I'm not here just to check a box. I'm here because I want to connect with you. Like, not just, being physically intimate, but just you. I want you. I just want to have a moment with you." And that meant a lot to me, because I think sometimes as women, we can just think like, I've just got to keep up this pace of checking this box, or, he's going to be angry and he's going to have frustration. And I think when we just look at it like that, we're missing out on the gift. Mm. And when I made that mind shift, it really helped me to just know, like, this is about connection. This isn't about checking a box. This isn't just a means to an end for Dave. This is for both of us to connect in a special way that God, gave us for marriage. Like he made this for marriage as a special gift.
This is really good, because I think it's so helpful for couples getting from the old place to the new place. How do I do that? How do I go from just another thing on the to-do list and frustration to, okay, gift, enjoyable,
right,
something good to do, and not resent it, if I could put it in that context.
Right.
What's the spiritual magic in that regard, and how do I get there if I'm more on the to-do side?
I'm glad you said spiritual, because that is the key, is you pray about it. You actually pray about your intimate life. Mm. And that is something we talk about quite a bit with couples, and their eyes kind of go like, what?
God wants to hear about that.
God wants us to pray about that. And it's like, yes, he created it for marriage. Why would you not pray about that? And that's something, especially in that season where we were a bit at odds with this, when I committed to praying about that, and we prayed together about that, it really started to shift. And it wasn't overnight. This doesn't happen overnight. Changes are usually little by little.
But it has to be mindful.
Yes.
All of this,
yes.
even for the husband on the things we need to work on.
Absolutely.
These are mindful changes that it has to change what's coming out of your mouth and where your heart is at.
Yeah, Dave and Ashley Willis are our guests today on Focus on the Family with Jim Daly, and we're talking about some of the content in their terrific book, Do Marriage Better, 7 Simple Shifts for a Deeper Connection. There's so much good stuff here, and we'll encourage you to get a copy and start doing those little incremental, intentional changes in your relationship. Give us a call, 800, the letter A in the word family, or click the link in the description below. I so appreciate the tone and the approach that you're taking to this topic. And Dave, you were pretty vulnerable in the book about a season where that drive was just something that was gone for you. And no doubt there are couples who are dealing with that. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that season, which I think you called the broken chair.
That's right. The broken season, which is the fourth, and the chair that is just broken. And there will be times in your marriage where, for physical distance issues, physical health issues, emotional issues, trust issues, there will be brokenness in this part of the marriage that you need to tenderly work through together. And we've experienced the broken season a few times in our marriage already. The first time was years ago when I had a struggle with pornography early in our marriage, and just the intimate wound that caused to Ashley, and working through that trust being rebuilt together was the first time we walked through it, and we talk some about that in the book. The second time we walked through the broken season, it wasn't because of a trust issue or a sin issue. It was a health issue on my part, where I'd always had a very strong drive and assumed I always would, but I got a thyroid disorder, this autoimmune condition that before it was diagnosed and properly medicated had just tanked my energy, and I was just sort of a wreck. And Ashley was so kind and encouraging, walking with me through that season, where for the first time ever, the bedroom, which is a place I'd always wanted to just sprint to, I was reluctant to go because I had such fear of inadequacy. I had anxiety around how my body is going to even respond. And it was a very, very vulnerable time. And she was so patient and so tender through that. And so over a period of time, not a super long amount of time, but over what felt like a long amount of time, finally got on the right medications, got myself feeling like myself again, and was back to feeling good. And I'm feeling good right now, and I'm very thankful for that. But I'll tell you that in that broken season that we walked through for those months, I'm thankful for that time, because it's in the broken seasons sometimes of life that God does the best work. The Bible says the Lord's close to the brokenhearted. And I think that relates to the broken seasons of our marriage as well, and even the broken seasons of our intimate life in marriage, that God does something special in the vulnerability that can only happen in those moments when you feel like, I can't do this on my own.
Yeah.
If you're listening and you're in a broken season right now because of health issues or trust issues or whatever it might be, just know God sees you. He is with you. He is going to walk with you through it, and you will not be there forever.
I want to turn to the legacy idea of what we're building within family. Some couples do that intentionally. Some couples are doing it accidentally. How do we have intentionality when it comes to building a legacy as we're married 40, 50, maybe even 60 years before we go on to heaven and we leave our kids, our adult kids, with the grandkids, and maybe even some great grandkids? What is that legacy target? What are we trying to communicate? Yeah, get through it and hopefully it'll all work out and we'll see you in heaven. Doesn't sound like a very good legacy.
Right. I think we have to continuously dream together, and legacy is a huge part of that. It's like, why did God bring us together? I mean, why did he put Dave and Ashley together? Why did he put, you and your spouse together? Like, what is it? And it's going to look, I think that you can look back, especially for those who've been married a long time, you can look back and say, well, in this season, it was this. In this season, it was this. And I think it can look different in different seasons. But overall, I think it's good to every year, it's important to take an assessment and to say, what went right? What didn't go so right? What do we need to improve? But also, what is our marriage speaking to those around us?
Yeah.
Like, what is that overarching message? And I know, for us, I mean, there's many, many things that we want to leave behind as a legacy, but I think the biggest one is that marriage is awesome. Like, even going through the hard moments, marriage is wonderful. It is a gift, and that there is hope even in the hard times. That's something that we always want to point to. But I think for every couple, just coming back to that reason that God brought them together, because I think in hard seasons, especially those broken seasons we talked about, we lose sight of that because we're in critical condition. We're just trying to survive, right? But in order to thrive, we have to think about that bigger picture.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Let me ask you guys right at the end here, why don't you give the pitch for why the book's so important? I don't think we do this very often, or maybe never. But you wrote it. I love it. I love the content, Do Marriage Better. Marriage feels like it's on the ropes in the culture. We see all the social data. If we as a culture really wanted to get to a better place, we need to protect marriage at all costs because it delivers healthy children and a healthy culture. So what's your greatest pitch for the book?
I would say anything that matters to us, we naturally have an inclination of wanting to improve. And for some people, that's, I want to get better at investing money. I want to get better at my fitness. I want to get better at my work. And those are all fine goals, but none of those hold a candle to the impact of getting better in your marriage. Because when we improve our marriage, every part of life will get better as a result. And when our marriage is hurting, every part of our life will start to hurt as a result. And God wants your marriage to thrive. He doesn't want you just to survive it. He wants you to thrive and to leave a legacy through your marriage. And maybe you feel like, yeah, we're not on the path to do that right now. It's just a struggle. God wants to help you take those next steps and just get better. You don't have to fix everything all at once, but you can make decisions all at once to put you on a new path. And this book, as practically as we can make it, from working with couples for the last 15 years or so, and from our own marriage and from what God's word says about these things, have tried to distill these concepts down into the simplest action steps possible, because I'm a pretty simple-minded guy. It's got to be clear for me. And so we've tried to make it clear. And I promise you, if you'll do these things, it will make a positive difference in your marriage. Not because we invented any of this, but because this is how God designed marriage to be. And we've seen this work over and over, and not only in our own marriage, but in the marriages of many people we've been able to learn from and also to help.
I mean, I think this book, ideally, a couple does it together, but we always like to say it takes one spouse going first. And so if you are listening to this show and you're like, wow, I know that our marriage is experiencing cracks, like you said, or maybe you have for a long time and you feel like you're hanging on by a thread. I even think one spouse could read this and little by little make those simple shifts, and you will see a difference. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's not one giant step. It's just you're inching towards those goals. But every inch matters. Every shift matters. And so as far as it depends on you, make those shifts.
Yeah.
And I think you'll experience some positive effects from it.
Well, and you guys have done it. So thanks for being with us. This has been great. It's so good to talk with you both. It's a wonderful experience every time. So
well, thank you for having us. We
you
love Focus on the Family. We love you two guys, and we just are honored to have a conversation.
It's good. And let me turn to the viewer and just say, I don't know how to make it any easier. If you can make a gift of any amount, $5, $10, we'll send you the book as our way of saying thank you for being part of the ministry. We don't pay shareholders. When you buy the book or send us a gift for the book, it goes right back into ministry, saving a marriage, saving a baby's life. I mean, far better to invest that way. If you can't afford it, we're going to trust others will cover the cost of that. Get a hold of us. Let us know that you really need the book, but you're not in a place to provide a gift. That's okay. We're a Christian ministry. We're into helping you become better in your marriage. So just get in touch with us. Don't be embarrassed. Again, we have caring Christian counselors. If you need that initial consult to say, here's where I'm at, what do you think? Don't be embarrassed. We've heard over 50 years just about everything that a couple could tell us. So again, we'll help point you in a biblical direction to get godly help and to think about the things like Dave and Ashley have talked about.
Yeah, help is just a phone call away. You can also donate on the phone and request the book. Our number is 800, the letter A in the word family. And of course, we've got all the details in the description below. Thanks so much for watching Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. I'm John Fuller, inviting you back next time as we help you and your family thrive in Christ.